I'd like to welcome you to the MyLiszt conversation series. And our first guests today are two vocalists based in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota, Alyssa Anderson and Jenny Ubl. Thank you both very much for participating in this conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Let me ask you both just one really basic question. How did you get into the arts and the vocal arts in particular in the first place? Jenny?
Well, I was always involved in music as a kid. I took piano lessons. I think my parents probably forced me at some point to take piano lessons. I sang in church choir because it was a fun thing to do. And I think I just kept doing it because I was enjoying it and I enjoyed the experience of like the social experience working with other people. And it just sort of dawned on me at some point, maybe in middle school or high school, that I was actually I was enjoying it enough that I wanted to keep doing it and start doing it at a higher level. And I had sort of an amazing experience in high school where I, for the first time, saw a chamber ensemble. I think it was a quartet or a quintet perform. They came and performed for our high school choir. And I saw people singing one and apart for the first time, and the way that they related to each other while they were singing, and the kinds of harmonies and the kinds of music they were able to create. And I was like, this is amazing. I want to figure out how to keep doing that. And so at that point, I started taking voice lessons and I started trying to be in different kinds of ensembles. I decided to study music when I went to college, and it just kind of took off from there. I've spent a lot of time working in churches and doing a lot with sacred music. So that's been sort of a defining feature of my musical track, as I've tried different things out. And it's been a really fulfilling way to enjoy music, because not only do I have the opportunity to sing as a solo performer, I have the ability to work with other singers and musicians of all different ability levels and different styles of music. And I have the ability to work with groups like Mirandala, which, are fully professional groups, and everyone kind of has their own individual areas of focus. But we do work a lot in churches, so we have that sort of as a grounding feature of what we do.
That's wonderful. And you referred to Mirandala. That's the Mirandala Ensemble based here in
Yes,
the Twin Cities.
yes.
And Alyssa, I think you're also a member of that, but why don't you tell us how you got into vocal arts?
Yeah, so I think the start was very similar to Jenny's. I took piano lessons as a kid, and at some point started playing. There were these terrible sheet music collections that we had from my aunt that were hits of the 60s and 70s. And I would just sit in the den playing and singing them. And then at some point, I figured out I liked the singing part better. And it was more interesting because I got words, and there was always, some sort of dramatic story, at least with those pop hits, certainly. And so then I got more interested in singing and started to do more with that. But even before I started singing, I remember in second grade, my second grade teacher put on a record of Leontine Price singing Aida, and it blew my mind as a second grader to hear that kind of music and that kind of singing. And it really made an impression on me as a young kid. I didn't go out, I had no opportunities to see opera as a kid. I grew up in a very small town in Western New York, but that really stuck with me, that kind of really dramatic, over the top. It was Aida, so a Verdi opera. Music and singing and story. And so I really kind of latched onto that in my pursuit of music as I got older. I was really honed in on art song and the little dramatic stories that can happen in a 3 or 4 minute song from the 1800s or the 1900s, and did some opera here and there, did musical theater. And then as I got through undergrad and went to grad school, I got more involved with a variety of things, got really interested in contemporary and experimental vocal music, and yeah, just continued on that trajectory until I sort of landed in early music without meaning to, and then have really been doing a lot of that over the last 10 years or so, which is part of my involvement in the Miranda Ensemble, is the early music part of things.
That's great. Now, are either of you able to make music your full-time career, or do you have to do something else to keep body and soul together?
I think it's the what is the definition of doing music for income? So there's so many facets involved in an artistic pursuit and music. So strictly speaking, just singing, it'd be very difficult in the Twin Cities to make a full-time livable wage just singing. But there's a lot of other things that go in on the back end of putting together performances and educational events. And so my path has been sort of maybe 60% singing and 40% administrative work for other arts organizations and my own arts organizations, doing things like bookkeeping and marketing and grant writing and logistics at a concert to make things happen on the stage. So sort of I feel like I make all of my living doing music. It's just what is the facet of music. It's not always opening my mouth and making sound.
So music and the business of music,
Yeah.
right? Jenny, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if I were to try to put together a full-time job of just singing, it would quickly become very tiresome and very tiring. So one of the things I love about what I do is I sing with groups like Mirandula, and I also am a part-time music director at a Catholic church in St. Paul. And that allows me not only to kind of step back from the performance, but also to work with a lot of other people and kind of help them grow in their own musical path. It gives me the opportunity to teach. I get to do arranging, a little bit of composing. I get to work with organists, soloists, violinists. I mean, you name it. It's all here. And it does have a little bit of a business element to it as well. And I find that having that variety of tasks to do throughout the week is actually helpful for keeping me like re-energized and rejuvenated. And it just gives your brain something new to focus on every once in a while, which I really like. I also have 4 kids at home, and so a lot of what I do at home is helping them, get ready for piano lessons. They sing in choirs. We do a lot of stuff at home that's just, it is naturally teaching them music because that's sort of the way my family lives. And so I find that I think if you added up all of the minutes that I was doing music, whether it was paid or unpaid, it would be more than full time. But I love the variety of it. And it's nothing that I ever would have expected to do. It all sort of happened.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about some of the art that you perform. What's your favorite either solo or duet or choral piece that you have sung in the past?
Oh, wow. That's a hard one.
There's so many.
You know what? I think because it's still fresh in my mind, the Monteverdi Sestina for 5 voices that we just did with Miranda Ensemble, that is right up there. That's an incredible piece of music, very difficult to sing and perform, but really gratifying to do as well. Yeah.
Gratifying for us and gratifying for the audience, I think.
Yeah.
The music is so evocative, and I think for a lot of people it's unlike anything they've ever heard before, but it's sort of immediately accessible because you can really hear and feel all of the emotions of the composer. And it's just a stunning piece to put together. I think one of the other things that I've really enjoyed doing lately, which I sort of just discovered in the last few years, is both Alyssa and I also sing with a group called Le Grand Band. And we do a lot of French Baroque music with that group, especially Charpentier. And I had not heard a lot of Charpentier's compositions before I started singing with that group, but I've grown to really love them and to really love the style of the French Baroque vocal style with all of the ornaments and trills. And it's just such a graceful way of singing. And the way he writes his vocal lines is it's very natural, and it's very easy to sing. So it's really gratifying as a singer to be able to do that.
Well, I can confirm that both of those concerts, a weekend or two ago with the Miranda Ensemble and the La Grande Band were wonderful concerts. So thank you both for your parts in that.
Yeah.
But let's turn to something yet to come, the Stabat Mater concert that you are both going to be singing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so had I had an idea probably 2 years ago that you get an idea and you just kind of let it. I get a lot of ideas. Some I try to make happen, and some just fall by the wayside. But I got an idea that I really would like to sing the Pergolesi Stabat Mater, and I knew the work. I don't remember when I first heard it. It was probably in like music history class in undergrad or something. And so I knew the work, and it's something I just, it's so beautiful. And so I decided I would like to do a concert that is focused on that. But in addition to the Pergolesi Stabat Mater, it would be interesting to pair it with the traditional chanted sequence, which I had done a lot when I sang with the Rose Ensemble, because that sequence was part of one of the programs that we toured, and we did it from memory. I no longer have it memorized, but we did that sequence from memory, and it was such a kind of moving, and such a stunning piece, because it's like 8 or 9 minutes long of chant, and I had not heard the chant before I did it with Rose Ensemble, and I was very struck by it, and the arrangement Rose Ensemble had come up with for those concerts. And so the idea was to pair these two things together, and how does that work? And so then a little over a year ago, I just started like putting out feelers. I was like, hey, Jenny, would you want to sing this? And I said to Michael Osmus, who is directing it and playing Continuo, hey, Michael, would you have any interest in playing this and directing it? And then talked to Connor O'Brien, who is a violinist in town and also is a contractor for instrumentalists, and asked him if he'd be interested. And so just kind of started piecing things together and thought, well, all right, this idea I think I'm going to make happen. And then, kind of fleshed out the program a little bit from there, since I think just the Stabat Mater chant and then the Pergolesi Stabat Mater seems like a weird concert program. So I did a little digging and added a bit more to fill out the concert program.
I'm sure it will be a great program. Jenny, did it take much of a sales effort from Alyssa to get you to join it?
Oh, not at all. She said, hey, do you want to sing? And I said, oh, sure. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk a bit about what it's like being in a duet. How do you do that? Who takes the lead, or is there a lead, or does it pass back and forth between each other?
I don't think there's a lead, at least for, it depends on who you're doing the duet with. But Jenny and I have done so much stuff together in various ensembles and in liturgical settings that I think we probably, unless it's something really unusual that one of us is an expert in, would easily equally share, how do we think this goes? What do we want to do here? How do we want to approach this? Or even just picking out music. We'll both consult, hey, do you know this piece? Do you want to do this one? So I think in our case, it's a pretty equal footing, I would say. Mm-hmm. And then what's helpful is then to have a third set of ears to tell us if we're going awry on things that we're putting together. So that's the job of the director.
Yeah, I don't feel so much like it's a duet as I do it's a trio, or an entire consortium of musicians by the time you add all the instruments in, because it's not as though Alyssa and I are the stars of the show. I mean, it's a group ensemble effort. And I think one of the specific things that Alyssa and I have done a lot together that has kind of contributed toward this collaborative mentality is we sing a lot of Gregorian chant together. We do that with the Mirandola Ensemble. Whenever we do school workshops with elementary and high school students, we always try to include a piece of monophonic, so single line chant, to give them the opportunity to hear that, because it's usually very new and foreign to them. And singing pieces like that, where you're just singing a unison line with another person or with a group of people, requires you to be very attuned to what they're doing, how they're breathing, how they're shaping phrases, pacing, vowels, all of that. And in fact, I'm almost more excited in this upcoming concert to sing the Stabat Mater sequence, the chant sequence, because of that very reason. It's it's so incredible. It's incredibly complex musically, even though it's just a single unison line. Um, but when you look at the structure of the sequence as a piece of music, it naturally lends itself to being a duet because there are lines that are repeated, and then there's the textual form is repeated. So you have rhymes, you have musical rhymes, and it's very structured. So I and it's just so beautiful. By the time you get to the end of it, you've heard 8 or 9 minutes of this mellifluous chant. It you I always feel a sense of peace and calm at the end of that. It's very different than what we're used to hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that kind of work in particular really allows any ensemble, but in particular a vocal ensemble of however many voices you have. I think it allows you to tune into each other, to gel, and to really just create a cohesive sound.
Do you find that you don't really know a piece of music until you've sung it, and it gives you more insights into the composition?
Absolutely. I think performing a piece of music for me is the best way to learn it, because there's so much work you can do before a performance, but I always find myself taking an extra 2 or 3 steps when I'm in front of an audience to think, okay, how can I communicate to them what I know about this piece, particularly if it's something they might not be as familiar with, a type of music they're not as familiar with. How can I make it accessible to them? And I think that taking those extra steps forward is what really helps solidify in my mind what I'm doing and why we're doing it.
Let me ask you, what's your dream performance? What would you really like to put on sometime? And
Mm.
money's no object.
I'm very interested in the contribution to music that we don't see very much by women composers throughout history. And years ago, I put together a concert. It was me and a theorbist friend of mostly Baroque era music by women composers that I called Binders Full of Women. And I would love to do a series called Binders Full of Women that is music by women composers throughout history, as early as like Hildegard, but even as recent as something someone's writing this week, and just like the real breadth of it. There's some fascinating stuff out there that's overlooked.
Indeed. Jenny?
You might laugh at me when I say this, but one of my all-time favorite composers is Morten Lauridsen. I
Yep.
absolutely love his music, and he has a work called Lux Aeterna. That's a series of, I think it's 5 pieces, and I find it to be just a stunning work. I've given my husband instructions that when I die, he is to put on a concert of this work in my memory. So now this is out there, and everybody can hear this and hold him to this. But one of the
Many
things
years in the future.
many years in the future, we hope, yes. But one of the things that I love about Lauridsen's work is that so much of it is chant based. And so I think it would be really interesting to do a concert or a series of concerts. And I know this isn't an entirely novel concept, but I think there are just so many ways to do it differently. To do a concert or a series where you show the development of music from, a single piece of chant, and how that same text or that same music was reinterpreted and reutilized in, subsequent generations, and how different composers approached it. I think it's fascinating how so many different people can look at the same piece of music that's very simple in its origin and turn it into something incredibly different. So I would probably start with chant and end with Lauridsen.
Wonderful. I would go to that program. Well, thank you both very much for participating in this conversation. It's really been a lot of fun for me, and I hope it will be for our audience. One more pitch for your upcoming program, March 14 at St. Mary's Church in Lowertown, St. Paul, and March 15 in Jordan, Minnesota.
Mhm.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael.